Bang in the middle of elections, it's time to talk about India's federal structure. How are things shaping up? Where is the economy headed? What is the fiscal federal structure really like? And who better than former RBI Governor and author of Indian Fiscal Federalism, besides, of course, being the chairman of the 14th Finance Commission, Mr. Y.V Reddy, who joins us right here on ET Now. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. I think you, in some sense, authored the 14th Finance Commission report, which kind of changed the fiscal federal structure. But today, once again, a debate has, started. And before I go into the debate, I will first ask you that question that you had taken a very bold bet of a devolution of 42% of all taxes to the states. Do you believe it has worked? Because now there are questions being raised on whether it may have not served its purpose. And do you also believe that the 15th Finance Commission is not going in that direction? Is it going towards centralization? Is that a fear you have?
First, the increase is from 32 to 42. Let's talk of facts. It's not correct. Comparable number is 39.
Okay.
Because before 14th Finance Commission, planned revenue expenditure was not within the Finance Commission's numbers.
Fair point.
So secondly, cesses and surcharges were not being shared. So as Professor Govindra Rao explained, the increase is only from 39 to 42.
Okay.
It's less than 10%. It is not 32 to 42, number one. Second, at that point of time, people didn't expect much, again, cesses and surcharges, especially after the GST came in. So cesses and surcharges have also been levied further. More important, they have not got it off as expected. Then there is a third thing, is in the non-finance commission transfers, there has been a reduction. There is squeezing in the non-finance commission transfers. So with the result, if you take the gross revenue receipts to the center, the state share has come down. In other words, while the finance commission recommended 32 to 42 or 39 to 42 more correctly, actually the share of the states outside the finance commission has come down. The burden on the states has increased. So actually there has been a reduction in the aggregate transfer from the center to states out of the gross revenue of the center.
And do you believe that goes against the federal, fiscal federal structure that was warranted?
But this is one part. This is one part of the story. The real issue is the quality, the nature of transfers outside the finance commission. That is the issue. And the nature of transfers and the programs outside the finance commission have showed a tendency towards more centralization. Because earlier, for instance, if there was a scheme, it was a divide by 50-50. Now the state governments are asked to put 60. They increase the share. So that's one aspect as far as the finance commission is concerned. In other words, center-state fiscal relations have to be viewed on two legs: finance commission transfers, non-finance commission transfers. Viewed together, I think you certainly find that the recommendations of the finance commission have been offset by non-finance commission, reduction in the non-finance commission transfers.
Fair point. I have a specific question to ask of you, because when you had increased or recommended to increase the share of the, a higher devolution to the states, the whole idea was that they should prioritize their own social sector spending and all of that. There is a new paper that seems to suggest by Amarnath H.K. and Alka Singh of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, that may have not happened. It may have not worked out. State governments have not been able to prioritize their own spending. And in fact, one of the things that is said is that the union government tax revenues has almost entirely been offset, like you pointed out, and their contribution to social sector schemes has gone down. Has this been in contrast to what you had initially planned and proposed?
See, when they are sharing the taxes, we have finance commission consisting of 5 wise men, has no business to take a view what is social expenditure, what is more important. That is for the democratically elected governments.
That's right.
So it is a sharing of taxes, not expenditure priorities.
Okay.
That's as simple as that. Now, as far as the social expenditure is concerned, each state is entitled to take a view on its priorities for social expenditure. If you take the total social expenditure on education or health, more than 80% of the social expenditure is by the states. Only 10% is by the center. How can you alter the allocations for the sector if in aggregate central government is only contributing 10 or 15%? So if at all, whoever is arguing the case, they should argue with the individual states. They have to convince the individual states. It's not for the Finance Commission to take an a priori view.
The relation between centre and state seems to be at crossroads. Let's take one scheme in point, the PM Kisan scheme, which was put out in the budget with much fanfare, talks about funds to farmers. Some states have not opted for this, and the centre credits itself for rolling out the scheme. Do you believe some of those states are justified in not taking this because it doesn't fit in their priority, in their list of priorities, so to say?
I see no reason to say that chief ministers are wrong on a subject like this. I think the chief ministers know better what the farmers are in that particular state. They know the condition of the farmers. They run the administration. They have the farm records. Except money and idea, what does the central government has to contribute to the state? Just tell me, what is the expertise of the central government to say that this should get a priority or legitimacy? But if it is done broader national interest, fine. So what I am saying is I cannot find fault with the chief minister if the chief minister says, even if you give me money, I don't want to do that, because it's a priority of the state and prerogative of the state. I would definitely respect the view of the chief minister on a matter like this.
So you don't think there's anything wrong with some of the states not rolling it out? Because we had seen this happen in the Ayushman Bharat thing also. And which is where, if I may step back and ask you a question on fiscal federalism, there is one criticism that the centre, and it's not just this government or any other government, the centre seems to many times superimpose its scheme on what is already existing in states. So a lot of states had very good healthcare schemes as is, and which is why there were no takers for Ayushman Bharat at a state level for many states. You believe that's justified?
No, I again say from my experience. From my experience, there are some states who do very well with innovative schemes.
True.
Some states don't do too well. If I were to be advising the central government, I will say, please tell the states which are not doing well to learn from the states which are doing well. Instead, the centre wants to impose and give a uniform pattern, which means that A, you lose the benefit of competition, you lose the benefit of diversity, and thirdly, the states which are ahead are in a way brought down to a level, and fourth, the nature of activities are such that they have to be in any case administered by the states.
I'm going to quote a part of the book, and your book says that Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister committed himself to a new framework of federalism in his long innings as Chief Minister. However, in actual implementation and in framing of the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission, there are indications of a shift towards centralization. Why do you say so?
That's all what I have explained in the book.
No. What I mean is that, the 15th Finance Commission, many people believe could go back on what the 14th Finance Commission had recommended.
Exactly. That's what the terms of reference are. In fact, the 15th Finance Commission terms of reference says reference to implies or requires a review of the 14th Finance Commission recommendations. That is unusual. Every Finance Commission takes into account, it reviews all the past, not recommendations of a particular commission. So in a way, the TOR of the 15th Finance Commission in an unprecedented manner is asking the 15th Finance Commission to sit in judgment over the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission.
Your book also talks about, and there's an entire section on Niti Aayog that one referred to. You have said that the Planning Commission played a crucial role in fiscal federalism, but its replacement by Niti Aayog raises more questions than answers about its contribution. Where do you believe the Niti Aayog has erred?
Because Niti Aayog hasn't done really, is not able to have an interface with the states. There is no coherent, the whole initiative with regard to central relationship between centre and states has fallen on the ministries now.
Individual ministries.
So each ministry decides what it should do with regard to the states. Even Niti Aayog or Planning Commission, even Niti Aayog and Planning Commission, they are also part of the union government. They were advisory, they are political. They are appointed by the Prime Minister, coterminous with yet there was an effort to have a coherent single point dialogue between the centre and states earlier. That's lacking now. There is no forum.
And you believe in a country like India, there needs to be one body that is an interface between the centre and the state.
See, whenever the union government says is trying to assume the responsibility of national interests, we must be very clear. There's a state level subjects, there's a union level subjects. Two lists.
True.
There's also national level. Suppose some state is opposing the union, it doesn't mean it's opposing the nation.
True.
So being anti-union government is not anti-national.
But do you believe the discourse and narrative is very much like that, that if you are holding up on your own as a state, you are being seen as anti-national, not just anti-central government?
And I'm only making a statement, I'm not making a judgment of the existing state of affairs. This distinction is necessary. This distinction is essential. For instance, CAG, when CAG is appointed, or so there are national institutions. Similarly, particularly Finance Commission, when the Finance Commission is appointed, it is appointed by the President in order to arbitrate between the conflicting interests of the union and the state. There are two contending parties for the share in the taxes. Now, if the terms are so far, if the terms of reference itself, they are objected to by some chief ministers, that's not a good beginning for a finance commission. So my feeling is 15th Finance Commission has an unprecedented, unusual challenge to gain the trust of the chief ministers. They are starting with a disadvantage.
If I may just take that argument forward, and I'm tempted to, I have a next question which is more fiscal in nature, but if I may just take that one leg of the argument forward, I understand what you're trying to say here, that the 15th Finance Commission doesn't just have a challenge to get out a report and, stick to its terms of reference, but also win and gain the confidence and trust of chief ministers across the country who are suspicious of their terms of reference. Is there a sense of suspicion in at a partisan level on the part of chief ministers versus the union government? Does that exist right now in India?
Let me confine the discussion to fiscal federalism and the Finance Commission. In the context of the terms of reference to Finance Commission, certainly some chief ministers are having reservations. Earlier, there were few occasions, but never such a large-scale concerted attempt by some chief ministers. And I think this is not good, because ultimately it is in the nature of a award between two contending parties. And therefore the Finance Commission, as I pointed out in my book, this Finance Commission requires courage and wisdom to maintain the trust of union and states on an equal basis.
And that's an added responsibility and a larger, big responsibility.
That's what I'm saying. This Finance Commission has greater responsibility, greater challenge than ever before in the history of this country.
I'm not talking about this government particularly, but do you believe there is always a tendency, because your book makes a very, it makes a very important observation, and it says that competing state-wise model now replaces one nation, one policy. And there's almost an attempt to administer a one-size-fits-all approach in a plural country like India. Is there a sort of, I don't know if the word is uniform policy making that is engulfing the minds of policymakers here in New Delhi? And it's never really going to work for a country like ours.
There is no institutional, at least there is no institutional mechanism outside the Finance Commission where there is a forum where the states and centre can interact with each other. That's an institutional vacuum. And now, to the extent all the centrally sponsored schemes outside the Finance Ministry are designed and implemented by a ministry, which is just one wing of the Government of India. So therefore, in a way, there is a tendency, and this is only one part.
True.
There are many other regulations and many other aspects. So the issue is whether there is a recognition of the diversity of the schemes or designs. There is no forum to take cognizance of it. So in a way, let me put it this way, the perception of the states is that there is more of one fit for all now than it was thought before.
And that's never a good thing for a country as plural as ours. But sir, the GST Council, you say, is a test of fiscal federalism. Most decisions have been by consensus. There's been some contention otherwise. Do you encourage such councils for more social sectors, health, education, things like that?
Exactly. In fact, 14th Finance Commission recommended creation of an institution for all transfers outside the Finance Commission.
Okay.
And we wanted an institution which will have expertise, where there will be political bargaining which is required, and also on a continuous basis. So this was the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission. See, let me explain. The real problem is not with the Finance Commission. They come in 5 years, they give an arbitration with regard to the tax sharing. So whether it is 32, 34, 36, but the real issue is how much you spend on education, how much you should spend on health, what should be the design, how to respect the state. This is a continuous process, it's a continuous dialogue. That requires an institutional structure. You are not creating that structure.
Fair point.
And you got rid of less than good planning commission. You got rid of it. But you don't have anything now.
So there is an institutional vacuum of sorts.
Yes. So our argument is that there is a lot of discussion on the future of Finance Commission. Well, the problem is not with the Finance Commission. The problem is with the non-Finance Commission transfer.
But just on the future of Finance Commission, and given that there is a public debate that's on this, how should the future of Finance Commission be? It's constituted every 5 years. There is some argument that's being put forward which says that it should be a permanent body, and members can keep changing and things like that. Are you of that view? Should it be a permanent body? Okay. Is there any merit in that argument?
First, see, as I mentioned, the problem is not with the Finance Commission. The problem is the non-Finance Commission transfers. Now you are talking about a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Number one.
Why fix what ain't broke?
Number one. Number two. In reality, as a reaction to the recent developments, two types of reactions have come. One is from former governor, Dr. Rangarajan, who said get rid of the Finance Commission altogether. And in the constitution, you fix a percentage, 35, 32, 42, whatever it is. On the other extreme, we have a statement made by Governor Das, who said that you have a permanent Finance Commission. So two extreme reactions.
True.
But this subject is not new. This was considered before. One Finance Commission recommended, it was rejected by the government.
True.
Sarkaria Commission examined it, they said it is rejected. 14th Finance Commission examined it and said no. There should be two types of institutions in center-state relations. One, which is the sharing of taxes. There should be a body which should be like adjudication, judicial, political, economic, all factors, which should command the trust of both parties.
True.
Then there should be other leg, where there should be scope for political bargaining, continuous transfers, all developmental aspects on the expenditure side. For that, there should be separate organizations. So there should be two institutions. One institution which comes once in a while, gives an award, predictable, stable in the medium term, and assured. The other is continuous bargaining, developmental, complex realities. So therefore, having one institution as permanent Finance Commission has two possible ways in which it can go. One is it can get highly politicized.
True, true.
Which is not right. It can become highly technical, which will not be acceptable. So in any case, I think it's not a very...
So the solution lies somewhere in between.
No, the solution does not lie in between. The solution lies in creating an institution for non-Finance Commission transfers.
Fair point.
Taking account of the recommendations into previous.
And that is also going to plug the vacuum of sorts that's being created.
Absolutely.
Fair point. If I may ask you some questions outside of fiscal federalism, and one of the questions has to be, and this is a question that I must ask you as former RBI governor and as a very eminent economist, is there is a lot of discussion in India right now on our economic data, and the discussion is twofold. A, there is suspicion being raised on the data that is being reported, on the methodology that is being followed. And the second leg of that entire argument is a lot of data that is being withheld, whether it's jobs data, crimes data. We've seen some high-profile resignations happen from the NSSO. How worried are you as far as this data debate is concerned? Because it's gotten extremely polarized. The economist on one hand, the CAs on the other, and it's become a shouting match of sorts, which I'm presuming hurts the credibility of our data.
Let me confine myself to fiscal federalism. The state governments have a very big stake in this debate. Let us take the issue of fiscal deficit. The aggregate fiscal deficit, or the aggregate debt according to encasing committee also, has to be shared between the center and states.
Yeah.
Now therefore, the integrity of the data relating to fiscal deficit, fiscal conditions of the center is very relevant for the states.
True.
They have highest stake in that matter. Now you have a situation where there are doubts about the numbers, including by CAG, who raised the issues of the possible underestimating of the fiscal deficit.
True.
So now GDP data is very relevant. So in a way, therefore, for the states, and in the context of fiscal federalism, the states should be as much concerned as any other stakeholder in regard to the data integrity.
But what would your, from a big picture point of view, what would your recommendation be to restore the credibility of the data? You know, debate is one thing, and in a noisy democracy, such debates happen. It is unfortunate that our data is under suspicion. But what would your recommendation be to restore credibility of our data?
Actually, if I may go back about 15 years ago, there was the National Statistical Commission.
That's true.
It was headed by Dr. Rangarajan. I was a member. So we wanted to maintain the independence, integrity and quality of the and timeliness of the statistical data. Now, in view of the recent controversy, I believe it is necessary to immediately establish a National Statistical Commission, a second National Statistical Commission, have an eminent person, have some users, have some representatives of state government also. Incidentally, much of the data, primary data is given by the state governments for building of the national data. It's not that it's not necessary to conclude that's a reflection on the current data. It's necessary to restore the trust and confidence.
Absolutely.
And therefore, my own inclination would be to have a second National Commission of Statistics and ask them to look at the practices and the institutional arrangements in other countries also, and come out with a framework to ensure trust and confidence in the data system.
You know, I can't appreciate your answer more than I am right now, because what is happening as a result is that people are now questioning everything. People are raising doubts on whether India is growing at 7%. If we are really growing at 7%, why are jobs not being created? And which is why one worries about the credibility of our data, and which is why I asked you that question. But are you somebody who doubts that 7% growth as well?
No, let me put it this way. Earlier, there used to be revisions. In fact, I made a statement at some stage that in all over the world the future is uncertain, but in India, for data purposes, even the past is uncertain.
Absolutely.
Because you keep revising. But even when there are revisions, there was not so much of erosion of trust. They are accepting as a part of life, because you see, the distinction is inefficiency, incompetence is at one level, but lack of trust in the integrity is the second level. Now the second level, first level suspicion used to be there. Oh, Indian data are not dependable. But now if there are some people saying it is motivated, that is not good news. We should get rid of that.
Do you believe it is actually wired into political motivation? It's politically biased debate right now.
Since I am in Hyderabad, I am a little far away from this debate.
I was hoping to get you to say yes or no, but you haven't. A quick question, sir, on what is right now a part of the economic narrative of this country, and that's a part of the manifesto that the Congress party has announced. It was first talked about in the economic survey by Arvind Subramanian, a minimum income guarantee, largely universal basic income, but to be done in phases, a committee to be set up and all of that. What is your take on this? Is there fiscal elbow room to support something like this? Because the way to look at this debate is, again, very distinct. You know, an economist will say, do we have the fiscal elbow room? A politician will say, or anybody else in the social scheme will say, the time has come to lift people out of poverty. When will we do it?
See, there are two different things. One is fiscal sustainability. Second, whether it is desirable or not. Now, if it is fiscally, it can be made fiscally sustainable if you give up something else. You give up various subsidies, it's possible. Technically it is possible to do this without sacrificing the fiscal sustainability.
You think technically it's possible?
Technically it's possible. Do you expect that will happen? That's a different issue. Second, I think judgmentally you cannot say that it's waste or not waste. In fact, in a way, I would say in the context of fiscal federalism, such matters are best left to the state than the center, for two reasons. The type of income support that is required in Bihar is different from tribal areas of Nagaland or Kerala or Andhra. So because of the diversity, it is best left to the states than the center. Second, if it is left to the states, all these fiscal questionable programs have to be accommodated within the hard budget constraint. Whereas if the center does that, then they don't have a hard budget constraint. Therefore, on balance, I would say, in the context of fiscal federalism, if these things have to be done, they are best done by the states and left to the states.
My only last question to you, sir, is going to be on this very thing. You are right. It should be done at the state level. It's also more effective if it is done at the state level, because, you know, the governments there are closer to the people it will matter to. But the question that I have for you is, and I think Raghuram Rajan said it to us in an interview yesterday, that the problem in India is that we keep piling up one scheme on the other, and there is obviously political unwillingness to wane off any scheme. if a scheme is not going to be taken away, should something like this be piled up is a big question.
I think that involves a judgment about the capacity, the nature of decision making by the government. I would not go to that. But, but there are states which have undertaken some social expenditures, including Tamil Nadu itself. So it's not necessary that just because you take some schemes to serve the poor people, it will necessarily hurt to growth. There are many states where you don't have any social sector schemes, still they don't grow.
True.
There are some states where these liberal programs are there, still they are able to grow very well and serve social purpose. So I will not proceed on the assumption that that this should be taken out of the agenda on the assumption that they will not be able to adjust the rest of the fiscal program. I will not proceed on the assumption. It may be possible to make a judgment. But I would say the risk, but there is a risk, I agree with that.
Sure.
But that risk can be minimized if you leave it to the states, because then it is within the hard budget constraint.
Fair point. A quick last question, sir, and this is more from a social, political, economic point of view. And this is not about this political manifesto or any other. Is there a broad acceptance by the political class, whether it's the BJP or the Congress or otherwise, that growth alone or economic growth alone can't lift people out of poverty? The kind of job creation that India needs may not happen, and which is why some amount of income support or some amount of support for farmers will be required. Is there a broad acceptance of that?
I'll put it slightly differently. In the context of, again, I'll bring it back to the fiscal federalism. In the context of fiscal federalism, a broad income distribution program, enabling such a program, is likely to be more in favor of backward states than subsidies.
Yes, yes.
The subsidies tend to go to the richer states. The studies also have shown. So between subsidies and the income support program, there is greater merit in doing the income support program than the subsidies, if you have to choose between the two.
On that note, sir, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.